Welcome to the Social Podcast, where no discussion or debate is off limits.
What a beautiful way to start a Monday. Thank you so much for being here at The Social. Well, listen, we cannot start the show without talking about what the world is talking about, which is sadly more heavy news. If you've been watching the news this weekend, you know that Iran and Israel, they continue to trade strikes. Israel saying it's hit the Iranian nuclear site targeted by the U.S. Saturday. Iran is now warning the U.S. that it has a free hand to attack American targets in the wake of their involvement. So listen, a lot is happening in the world, but ladies, what are your reactions to this? And how are we feeling with this, now more conflict in the world and an escalation very quickly?
I mean, I feel like maybe I shared this with other people here. It's like I feel helpless, like just completely helpless to these big decisions. It feels like a lot of very unhinged men are running the planet right now. So I'm also a bit angry about that.
That part.
That part.
And I think the biggest victims inevitably in all of these conflicts are innocent men, women and children who have nothing to do with any of this. And that makes me really, really mad. I am glad that Carney has put out the word that of de-escalation is the interest and also has been really, really trying to separate us from the United States. But like all wars, all I see is the potential for a revolving door that just escalates and leaves, tons of people who are dead in its wake. That's what I feel like.
So true.
You hit on something when you said unhinged men. I think that's sort of helps explain how I feel, which is I feel like I'm acknowledging the seriousness of the situation, but I'm not panicking. And bear with me.
Interesting.
Only because unhinged men, like you're saying, like it feels like they're running or screwing everything up right now. I guess I zoom out and be like, oh, they've been screwing things up since the beginning. Do you know what I mean? And it feels like we're not seeing more war than before in human history. We're just seeing war more, if that makes sense, because of social media, because of the algorithm.
And it seems like we're not learning from it. I don't know about you guys, but I am so tired of hearing breaking news, and these are unprecedented times. Like, if I don't hear those two things for a very long time, it would be too soon. And of course, you couldn't avoid the conversation. Everybody was talking about it. You knew exactly where you were or who you were with when you heard the news. But there were two groups, actually, that were quite quiet. I didn't hear from them. And those are the America First and No New War Trump supporters. I didn't really hear a lot from them, which is interesting. And just if anybody doesn't know, listen, Trump campaigned on no new wars and said he was going to pull the United States out of 2 wars. That's what he said on the first day of his presidency, and now we're 6 months in, and he just launched them into a 3rd war. And I know
technically they're not calling it a war.
It's not calling it a war, but it smells like a war, and it sounds like a war, and it drops bombs like a war. But you know what? Even though I feel relatively safe being a Canadian, being in Canada, it doesn't eliminate the fear that I have for the people who are going to be affected by this. I'm thinking about the 17,000 Americans who live in Iran, who are scrambling to get out of that country after the U.S. Senate said they are not going to send any kind of transportation to get them out of there, which is terrifying. And I think about the Americans who are just trying to live their life and feed their families and go to work like the rest of us, and they have to live in fear, because I watched some Iranian media and they were like, there's going to be a retaliation. It's not when, it's not if, it's when. So I'm thinking about those people, and if that doesn't keep you up at night, there's some information that people need to know about. There's a young man, he's 22 years old. His name is Thomas Fugate. I think we have his photo. Thomas is the head of terrorism prevention. He was appointed that job by Donald Trump. He has 0 experience in the job.
God.
His resume details his experience in landscaping and grocery clerk. And he is in charge. So these are all the things that, even though as a Canadian I feel safe, I can't not be sick for my American friends and what they're going through and what they're thinking.
Can I take back what I said about not panicking?
Yeah. Thomas will do that to you, won't he?
Okay, I get what you're saying. I mean, you could hang out with my dad.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring up my dad is because my father has seen active combat. He was in the Portuguese military. And there's a generational divide, because our generation not only has not seen active war, but we have been really lucky because we were born or raised in this country. So right now, even though there's a lot of fear, I think the fear is warranted. And why is it warranted? Because of the way that Canada is so multicultural. I have Iranian friends, and they are worried about their country, but they are also a generation that wants to see change in their country. How they're going to get to that change, and is it because of the U.S.? That's a whole other question. But going back to my father, you know, he takes that long view that if you take a look at the length of human civilization, our history as humans, we are more often in conflict and war than not. What the difference is post-World War II, which saw, you know, tens of millions of people die. We've been a lucky generation. They call this generation post-World War II, they call it the long peace. The long peace, where you didn't have direct wars between superpowers. Now, we're not there yet. It's not like Russia and the U.S. are going at it, or China and the U.S. are going at it. And hopefully never. But there are conflicts. So my dad kind of sits back and he's like, this is humanity.
And not just that,
but are we supposed to learn from that, though?
We never have. But I also feel like it's not just conflicts. Like what happened over the weekend wasn't a singular event. It's more like a complicated thread. And the more you go back and connect the dots, you're like, oh, it didn't just start. You can go back to the 90s, you can go back to the 2000s, the 90s, and you go back to the 80s, and you go back to 70s, and you go back to 53. I'm sure you can go back even further. And I don't know, when I do that, it somehow makes the world feel less chaotic. It's just my impulse.
Makes you feel less chaotic?
Yes.
Really?
I get that. It makes me feel less chaotic.
What it says is like nobody has learned that creating wars to stop wars is a totally illogical and nonsense.
It doesn't work.
It does not.
And that's where the hope is. Yeah, isn't that funny that it makes me feel like, this is the way it's always been.
And is it because you think that these generations, when you think of the people who understood and fought and experienced World War II, right? My parents were alive at the tail end of they were just, you know, born. There's a generation that knows and understands war. That generation is dying. So are they just forgetting and then they just repeat?
I think it's trauma begets trauma and traumatic actions, and no one is doing, you know, deep work. And I think we need peace leaders right now to emerge, not the Donald Trumps who claim that they're going to be peace leaders and then go, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do today. I guess I'll drop a bomb. Like that is not a peace leader.
Because I think he is at the heart of all of this. This is not just history repeating itself, but it seems that they have a president who just seems to be fighting to be respected in a weird way. It started with that war parade that cost $45 million. Like he wants to somehow etch himself in the history books as a strong man, but a lot of people are going to pay for that, it feels like. I don't know. Every time I hear him speak and the way that he was talking, like kind of wagging his finger at Iran, like, you better not retaliate. I go, you're not a dad talking to your teenager. You're talking to people who are going to have real feelings about what you did, and they are going to retaliate. You can't tell them what to do. So I think he is at the heart of this issue. I think a lot of us have learned about how wrong war is, but there's something about Donald Trump where he is just
because he's an unpredictable guy. He's unpredictable. He's unstable. We don't think a lot of people don't think he actually knows what he's doing. To your point of the guy that looked like a photo from an SNL skit.
Thank you.
You know, I think there is not a lot of confidence in him as a world leader.
Forethought before he makes these decisions.
Forethought, yeah. But you just have, going back to where you started with unhinged men, I just wonder at what point have we had enough of men who just are interested in power and nothing else? We all say it over and over again, but if women were running the world right now, there would be no war. I'm just telling you right now.
So after an unfavorable Sunday Times profile, Jameela Jamil has declared that she is considering banning female journalists from ever interviewing her again. She writes on Substack that the hundreds of women she's spoken to throughout her career, only 3 of them, she feels, have written fairly about her. So what do you think of this? Is it okay for someone to ban a certain gender from interviewing them?
Well, I think maybe, I'm curious if the problem has less to do with women interviewing her and more the medium in which the interview appears. Because when it comes to print journalism, you know, like old school print journalism, you lose control over the narrative. And so she has no say.
So that's what she's saying. She's not banning, she's only banning print.
Only banning print. But I think it has less to do with women and more to do with the medium in which they're writing in. Because with a podcast, let's say, or on social media, she can have some control. She can edit things herself. With print journalism, she gets especially prestigious print journalism, like the Sunday Times, she's not gonna get to read the piece before to fact check it herself. They'll have a fact checker most likely. She gets no say in the final copy. And you lose all control.
Interesting.
And I think that's why it's the loss of control. And I read the piece. And it's quite flattering. But there are lots of facts that come out, and the facts are all put together in one piece. And so I began to wonder, if for her, it was seeing all of those things together in one place. She even recorded the whole conversation herself. The journalist, wrote that in the piece, that she had her tape recorder out, that her publicist was sitting over there, watching the whole thing. It's because she wanted the control. It's like, it makes you wonder why celebrities still want to take part in print journalism.
A lot of them don't.
Yeah.
Take the Beyoncés of this world. They're like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be really pretty on stage and I'm just going to perform and you guys can just hear about me on my own social media page. I'm a little conflicted because I know who she is, but I don't really follow her career. And so when I was reading this story and I was looking at it, I'm like, I wonder, because when you say everybody's a problem, I raises a flag. It's like, is everybody the problem? Or are you the problem if you're having an issue with all of these women? So is it that she has perhaps an issue with the way that she communicates with women or how she feels about being interviewed by women compared to being interviewed by men? Maybe it's an easier or more receptive relationship. And then there's the other part where I know as a woman of color, a lot of times when you walk into a space, you're met with these microaggressions and you feel like you always have to explain who you're not before people can see you for who you are. But I don't know if that's the situation, only because she's calling out a large group of women. And I'm like, I'm just curious about it. And maybe to your point, maybe we're in a time where celebrities know they don't have to do that interview. They can have control and they can just pick up their phone and say, hey fans, and just go on and on and on. And maybe that's what she's rubbing up against. She misses that, or she likes that control. She doesn't want to hear
She's quite
things.
prolific on social media.
Yes,
like she's very
Which has gotten
outspoken.
her in a lot of trouble, which was reported in the Sunday.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
She doesn't like to hear the criticism.
I think, for me, I don't know. I kind of fall on both sides of the fence on this one also, because I get what she's saying. There's a loss of control here, but there's also the other side of it, which is, women, I hate to say this, women are part of the patriarchy too. So the idea that she thinks she gets a free pass just because a woman is interviewing her, that's actually really demeaning to any women.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I actually think that's like, what are you trying to say? I'm supposed to give you some
She's
slack?
supposed to be nice. Like
so
the
I'm supposed to be nice to you because I'm a woman and you're a
She's saying
woman?
that men have been easier. I mean, I don't understand. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she's basically saying the interviews that she's done with men have been, by and large, fairly, just sort of not maybe as feeling
hard-hitting or
hard-hitting.
interrogative.
Although Piers Morgan has repeatedly kind of trolled her on social media, but I think that what she's feeling is that a lot of women would take certain things that she says and maybe twist them, or they would attack her activism. She's a very outspoken activist for anti-diet culture. She created I Weigh. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a website, I Weigh, like as in weigh.
Okay.
And so I think she said a lot of good things, and I just wonder sometimes if it's not about people micro-analyzing every single aspect of somebody who declares themselves a feminist to find any kind of evidence that they aren't quite as perfect as they claim to be.
And do you think that because it's coming from a female journalist, she's coming through that lens?
I wonder if she's extra hurt by it because she feels like she's being attacked by women in a way that what all the work that she's trying to do to help women, and yet she feels like she's being attacked by women. I'm not saying that it's...
Oh, that's interesting.
I know,
but
yeah.
I think that's part
I think that's the challenging part, because one could argue that the whole point of them sending a woman to interview her, I don't know who does the assignment editing at the Sunday Times, but if you look at the dynamic between a woman who's challenging a feminist woman and a man who would be assigned to write that article, we have words. If a male wrote this article, he could be labeled potentially a misogynist.
Right.
Just because of the dynamic that a man is writing anything disparaging about a woman, which of course a man can write something disparaging about a woman, especially in the realm of journalism. So I don't know where I land with her. I think to say banning an entire gender, you're making some big assumptions, but sadly, sometimes it's your own community that, yes, can take you down the worst. There is that.
It'd be your own people.
It'd be your own people, but also, you also can't say that all female journalists have bias. So I don't know where I land with it either. I don't
Here's where we're going to land. We're going to switch topics, and this one's a doozy.
Okay.
Up next, Costco's announced a new perk for executive members. They'll have exclusive access to the store for 1 hour before everyone else. So I was thinking, what retail perk would you pay more for?
Not that one.
You wouldn't?
No, why?
You don't need to go to a big box place.
No, it's not even that. I'm an early shopper because I don't like the crowds and I want to avoid traffic. So I'm the person who's like, what time does the store open? And I will be there on the dot so I can get in and get out.
But now you wouldn't be allowed in.
I know, but no, they're saying that, okay, I can get in there early. No, if I have exclusive access, and I'm assuming that you have to pay a little extra for that, I want members only stuff. I want stuff that nobody else can get. I want you to have special events just for me. Don't tell me I can get in the door and make it sound like it's special. You can't package garbage and just like, this is so good. It's like, you mean I could just get there early? Okay. No, I think that they have to rework this, but I'm sure in the marketing it sounds amazing, but I'm like, I'm not falling for that. I get there early anyway. What do you guys think? You guys Costco members?
I'm not a member, but do you remember during the pandemic they would let seniors and people who have been compromised go in? I'm down for that.
Me too.
So especially with my parents, you know, like if there's mobility issues, you know, self-checkouts now, that takes 5 hours if you've been with any of my parents. So I would love to pay, I would pay for an extra special membership if there were perks for seniors or anybody else who has mobility challenges, et cetera.
Like a real perk.
You know, like a real perk. Right. Give me a real perk.
I'm so obsessed with getting stuff for free or getting a deal. I don't think I could pay to get a perk. Do you know what I mean? Yes. I would be driven to be like, how do I get this perk for free? Or they pay me $5 to have this perk.
That's good when you think about it, though.
System.
This past weekend, I actually had to do a return, an online return. I haven't done a lot of buying and returning recently, but I bought something and a bunch of stuff, and I went to the store. And maybe this is, everyone's gonna be like, oh, I know, but this has been there for ages. It was new to me. I had to literally package up my own stuff. There was tape sitting there beside me. I had to scan a QR code. I had to punch in, like I basically had to learn a system in order. This used to be somebody's job. I had to become a cashier.
Customer service. You were working in
customer service. There was nothing. I literally did this all on my own. This is a very well-known store. And I was mad. I was like, either you pay me to do this, or you give me a serious discount.
Give me a perk.
Give me a perk.
Give me a perk.
I don't know how that relates to this, but that's what I gotta say about that.
Subscribe to the Social Podcast so you don't miss a fiery debate. Until next time, socialites.